Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar. We're going to have a look at the weather warnings as we do have some very unsettled and stormy conditions this week, and we've got yellow wind warnings issued through Tuesday and Wednesday. Have a look at the UKV, look at the precipitation, temperature and wind gusts. As I said, it'll be a very unsettled, stormy week. A lot of heavy rain around, thunderstorms around, some quite cold conditions as well. You can't even rule out a bit of snow over some of the higher routes with colder air moving in within these low pressure systems. However, as we head into the long range, look at the GFS, GM, ECMWF and the ensembles, it's looking likely higher pressure will return towards the weekend and start of the next working week, so in the next sort of 5 to 7 days time, and it could actually be a very warm area of higher pressure. We're seeing consistent signals from the majority of ensemble members and the majority of operational runs for high pressure to build in from Europe, and it's going to bring us up a southerly or southeasterly wind, bring up some very warm air, and even the GEM today showing more like heatwave patterns as we head through the middle to end of April, with upper air temperatures getting more than 10 degrees above the average. So yeah, it could be really quite warm as we head through the rest of April. But of course, for this upcoming week, we're going to have to contend with this very unsettled and cooler weather. But as I said, a lot of chopping and changing, and we'll see what the runs have for us today. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. And remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So do start on the live radar. You can see we've got a lot of heavy rain around at the moment. The main weather front has now cleared out into the North Sea, into parts of Europe, but we're left with the centre of the low through northern England and a lot of the heavy thundery showers spiralling around it. If we do zoom into northern England, this is where the centre of the low is moving in, and you can see a lot of heavy thundery showers moving through lines here through parts of East Midlands as well, to northeastern areas and northwestern areas. Really heavy rain here, where we see these darker reds, torrential rain, thunderstorms likely within this. So really horrible through the rest of the afternoon in northern England as this does slowly clear. Elsewhere, you can see in the south we do have some heavy thundery bands. They will move through quite quickly. Towards outer bands, we've got quite gusty winds, so should move through quite quickly, but could dump a lot of rain in sort of 5 or 10 minutes while they do move through. So it could be still relatively horrible there, and that's similar to parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland and into Scotland as well. We can see a bit of snow starting to fall, and more of that will fall to snow as cold air does start to undercut these lows in from the north. So a really quite horrible day, huge contrast to what we had through most of the Easter weekend, where it has been pretty warm and pretty sunny, really quite nice out there. But as soon as we start the new week, the weather has a big change, and it does look likely that this will continue through the rest of the week. Now, to put on the temperatures just after 1 p.m, you can see it's still relatively warm. Temperatures around those low to mid-teens, or let's say mild really. It's not particularly cold, but it's not anything really that warm. Temperatures around average, maybe slightly above right now, but they will be dipping to below average over the coming days as that cold air does move in within the low pressure system that does move in tomorrow. So yeah, if you think it's cool now, it's going to only get a lot colder over the next couple of days, down towards the high single digits for many, maybe creeping towards 10 to 12 degrees in a few spots, but that is really only where we do avoid the heaviest rain and the strongest winds. Most areas it's going to feel really quite cold out there over the coming days, so really not great if you've got any outdoor plans. I did say this in yesterday's video, if you have got kids, you're out for Easter holidays, if you've got anything planned, make sure you do plan it for next week, not this week, as next week, can't say it's guaranteed to be warmer and drier, but it's looking quite likely to be warm and dry. Much better conditions than what we have this week, where it is really quite horrible for most of this week. Of course, there could be some gaps of some sunnier, drier weather, but most of the time there will be a big risk of gusty winds, cooler temperatures, and some heavier rain. Now, if we do move on to the weather warnings, we do have 2 weather warnings issued. We've got a yellow wind warning issued from 3 p.m. tomorrow until 3 a.m. on Wednesday. A period of strong winds, bringing the potential for some disruption later on Tuesday and perhaps into early hours of Wednesday. Again, we did look at this quite detailed yesterday, and it has been updated this morning. Latest ideas have led to an eastward extent of the warning area being reduced, end time of the warning also been brought forward. So we won't run through this too much, but high likelihood, lower end of the impact, 45 to 50 miles per hour inland, maybe 60 miles per hour across Irish Sea coasts. And then we have another warning from 6 a.m. on Wednesday until midnight on Wednesday, a swathe of strong winds potentially bringing some disruption on Wednesday. Again, have we seen an update for this? No, we've seen no updates since Thursday. So, since Sunday. So, once again, 40 to 50 miles per hour widely, 60 miles per hour towards coastal areas, high likelihood lower end of the impact. Again, we could see a snap amber warning issued at very short notice if we do see this low start to move in much deeper than initially anticipated. But I don't think we'll see anything named now, as it's a little bit too late. There is the potential we see it named by another country for its subsequent impacts, but at this moment I don't suspect it will be named. But of course, I say that probably an hour after this video is published, it will be probably named or something like that. Probably a coincidence like that. But at the moment, just an area of quite stormy conditions, but not a named storm as of yet. But the potential is still there if we do see some subtle shifts in those wind speeds. If you now go over to the UKV and see what that is showing over the course of the next couple of weeks, now you can see the next couple of days, you can see the heavy rain moving through early this morning, and then you see the heavy thundery showers moving through the rest of today. They'll continue all through the afternoon into the early hours of the evening, and overnight will continue in the north but should die out further southwards. As we head into Tuesday, you can see a little bit of a lull during the morning, so if you have got some plans you need to do tomorrow, maybe early in the morning is best, before we see another heavy batch of rain moving for most areas around the late morning into the early to mid of afternoon. Again, very heavy rain. You see a bit of a hook developing within that low, just showing you the intensity of it. As they move in, some very heavy thundery rain around that centre, and just generally some widespread horrible conditions for many areas as it does progress through. Again, some snow through Scotland. Again, nothing too significant, but over the higher routes could be quite snowy up there for a time. And as that heads through into the early hours of Wednesday and Thursday, look at that, quite a few heavy but also wintry showers developing over higher routes, even down into the southwest. A couple hundred metres above sea level, seeing some snow. So wouldn't be surprised if many areas through Wednesday to see some hail or some sleet within some of these heavier showers, even to moderate hills of 100 or 200 metres, which is still quite a big proportion of people. As we head through Wednesday, still very unsettled with some of that wintriness developing in that low, and again you can see another centre of the low develops down through Wednesday afternoon, gives some very horrible conditions into central and southern areas. Beyond that, as we head into Thursday, we eventually see the backside of the low clear, but still plenty of showers through Thursday afternoon. And then finally into Friday, we see another low skirt the south coast, but nothing too significant, and just a lot of heavy and maybe even thundery showers through Friday and into the weekend, where things should start to die down, but we are still relatively chilly, and that high pressure is trying to start to build in, but probably won't fully build in until the start of the next working week. Now, if you look at the wind gusts just for the next couple of days, as we do have some very stormy conditions, as I said, moving in, you can see through the rest of today, maybe 40 or 50 mile per hour gusts inland, so quite gusty out there, but nothing on what could be coming tomorrow, as that low approaches, widely 50 to 70 miles per hour towards coastal areas, and once again 40 to maybe 60 miles per hour inland, and that continues for a number of hours. We'll see even some more severe winds through Wednesday. Coastal areas 70 or 80 miles per hour, maybe as high as 85 to 90 in a few spots, and inland widely 50 to 60, and maybe as high as 65 to 70 in a few spots in the far southwest and southern parts of Ireland as well. Eventually that does clear, and the winds will slowly die down, and by Friday they should be back to sort of normal wind gusts. For a time there could be really quite horrible. And again, if these sort of wind gusts were slightly higher and slightly more inland, we could see this names. But again, subtle adjustments we will have to see before, as I said, it dies down into the weekends. If we do just finish by looking at the max temperatures, you can see through this afternoon, warm when we do see a bit of sunshine perhaps between the showers in the south and the east, 14, 15, but under the cloud and the rain, really struggling into the low double digits or even high single digits. Overnight tonight, temperatures will be cool down to the mid-single digits or even low single digits, and into tomorrow afternoon, really struggling under that rain band. Look at that, single digits in the south and the west, really quite horrible. Head of the low pressure system, could see 12 or 13 degrees, but as soon as that rain and cloud moves in, those temperatures will plummet. As we head through early hours of Wednesday, a frost in some areas and many areas not getting much above 3 or 4 degrees, so really cold. And into Wednesday afternoon, look at that. Under the rain through central England, the Midlands, maybe only 3 or 4 degrees in a few spots. Really, really chilly. And the best spots maybe getting to 7 or 8 degrees, maybe 9 or 10 at best. So really not good at all. As we progress into Thursday, overnight temperatures once again quite cold, and into the afternoon slightly higher, perhaps 10 to 12 degrees in a few spots. So slowly rising as we head into Friday. Again, maybe 10, 11, 12 in a few spots, but still relatively cold in other areas. Before into the weekend and start of next week, it should start to turn quite a bit warmer, maybe up towards the mid-teens again. But again, early hours of Saturday could be quite a widespread frost in the north and the west. So even when the rain does clear later in the week, it goes more showery, the winds do die down a bit, it is still going to be extremely chilly for the time of year. Widespread frost in some northern and western areas at times, some snow around, some sleetiness, some hail, some wintry showers, could even to sort of moderate hills, and just a generally very cool or cold feel out there for the next few days. So if you now have a look at the longer range, go over to the GFS and we'll have a look at the GM, ECMWF and the ensembles as well. You can see, if we have a look at the latest GFS, that we've got that low pressure running in from the west at the moment. Going to be very unsettled, as you can see. Low moves in, very stormy through Wednesday with that low moving through, and it does continue. Eventually does clear into the weekend. High pressure does build back in, and we see a southerly or southeasterly wind develop. Now the GFS does something here that is completely different to what the other runs are showing, so I would discount this a little bit. But as you can see here, we do build up high pressure to our north and our east, in which you pull in a cold easterly wind and eventually a north to northeasterly wind here by around the end of April. Again, I wouldn't put a lot of weight into this. You can see the upper air temperatures are cold, if not very cold for the time of year. You can look at the temperature deviation, look at those darker blues moving in, so it'll be really quite chilly. But I must emphasise, none of the other runs are showing this, and the majority, like 90% plus of the ensemble members, have much warmer conditions. I do think this is just an anomalous GFS run, because if we do look at the midnight run, you can see if we put on the pressure pattern, you can see it is much more high pressure dominated there, and you can see much less of an easterly wind and more of a southerly or southeasterly wind with a warmer higher pressure system. Eventually it does kind of try and get easterly flow in, but it's nowhere near as cool, if not cold. This would still be towards the lower end of the ensemble members. So definitely this GFS today is going for something a little bit more anomalous than the other ones are showing. Again, can't discount it, but I wouldn't give this too much weight at this stage. The GM and the ECMWF are much more likely, are much more like what we think we could be seeing. Maybe the GM is a bit over the top, and ECMWF is probably more in the middle ground here. So you can see low pressure moving through the coming days, very unsettled and stormy. High pressure built in over Europe, up towards Scandinavia. And look at that, a very strong southerly to southeasterly flow. If you look from the upper air temperatures, it is really quite warm there from around early next week, around Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday time. Look at that 15-degree isosphere moving in. That would give temperatures in the summer in excess of 30 degrees. That would be into the low 30s, would be heat wave conditions. So it's a heat wave type air mass just coming into the middle of April. So instead of seeing low 30s, we'd probably see more likely mid 20s. So maybe 24 to 26 degrees with this sort of air mass, maybe slightly higher in a few spots. If this was in July, we would be seeing temperatures probably around that low 30s, 30 to sort of 32 degrees in the south and the east. So really, really warm air mass. You can see this from the temperature deviation, widely 10 degrees above average, if not 12 degrees for a large swathe of the British Isles. So yeah, incredible warmth moving up for the time of year, and this would give some really, really warm conditions. Again, if we put on the 2 metre temperatures, go to United Kingdom, look, you'll be able to see that next Tuesday, again, we can't see the 3 p.m. peak, but either side it's around 21, 22. So you'd expect in the middle of the day, around that 2 to 4 p.m. point where we do see the peak temperatures, it most likely would be around that 23 to 25 degree range, as what we would expect. And again, locally, high resolution models would probably get maybe a 25 or 26 squeezed out there. So very warm, heat wave sort of air mass moving in there. It will come on very suddenly as that does move in, and as it gets pushed away from the east, it will move away quickly as well. But could see a good 2 or 3 days of very warm conditions here, even hot conditions for the time of year, with generally warmer conditions either side. Very, very interesting from the GM. But as I said, it is on the warmer end. If we do look at the ECMWF, this is more of a realistic sort of pattern in the middle. Similar pattern, but not quite as warm of an air mass. Very unsettled over the coming days, as you can see. Eventually the high pressure builds into our south and our east, and we do see more of an easterly flow here. So less of a southerly extent, more of an easterly, which means we still see the warmer air. We still get the 5 degree isotherm in, even the 10 degree isotherm does come in, but eventually we do pull more of a 5 degree and less air mass in, maybe towards freezing point, which is just average for the time of year. So still above average, still pretty warm. Again, you can see temperature deviation still in the yellows and oranges here, but just not quite as hot, more of a realistic outcome here. As I said, GFS is probably much cooler than we would expect. The GM is a little bit warmer than we would expect, and the ECMWF probably is bang what is most likely to happen. And you can see here around 16, 17 degrees at midday, so maybe 18 degrees in a few spots further westwards. So you would expect, as we get towards sort of 3, 4 p.m, again, the peak time of the day, we'd reach that 20 or maybe 21 degree range. So warmest day of the year, warmest sort of period of the year so far, definitely, and again, generally quite warm with a southerly or southeasterly flow. So more realistic, good few degrees cooler than the GM, but still warmer than anything we've seen so far this spring, and definitely a much warmer, drier, and hotter, sunnier sort of pattern. So if you do now have a look at the ensembles, you can see this well reflected. The next sort of 5 days, very unsettled with a lot of precipitation spikes and generally cooler or colder conditions at times. For around the 16th, we go above average and we go considerably above average. You can see runs near the top, around that 10 to 15 degree isotherm area. That's what the GM was showing. Very, very warm, and I'd say a little bit overdoing it. You can see the GFS operation one does get warm, but it does go cold quite quickly towards the end of the run. Again, wouldn't put too much weight into that, but still does show some warm weather for a time. That's a bit more anomalous there with that cold pattern. The majority, though, around that 5 to 10 degree point, which is roughly where the ECMWF is, in that sort of middle ground zone. Very warm around that period, a drier, warmer spell. So regardless of how warm it gets, you can see pretty minimal precipitation, so it will be a lot drier and probably a lot sunnier too. Again, you see that from the sea level pressure, low pressure at the moment, much higher pressure next week. And if we look at the 2 metre temperatures, you see a considerable rise next week as well. Majority of runs getting into the mid to high teens, if not getting above that 20 degree point. And finally, if we just finish with the ECMWF ensembles, you see a very similar pattern. Again, cooler over the next 5 days, quite a lot of unsettled weather, and then peaking well above average. And even the ECMWF run is slightly below what majority of its runs are showing, so perhaps the ECMWF is slightly on a cooler side of the ensemble mean as well. Majority at that 5 to 10 degree point, some a bit higher like the GM run. So can't rule out the GM, can't rule out sort of a heat wave pattern, but the majority are just warm or very warm for the time of year, getting into the low 20s, or at least high teens, widely into the low 20s locally, or maybe even slightly higher in a few spots. So it's looking really quite warm, really quite pleasant next week, but we've got the opposite this week, cold and unsettled to get through. So going to be next 2 weeks are going to be very big contrasting. We've got cold, unsettled, stormy conditions this week, much more settled, warmer, drier next week. So if you do hate the conditions we do have now, at least there is something good on the horizon that is looking pretty likely at this stage. You've got to look forward to that weather coming in the next sort of 5 or 6 days. For the time being, just get through this quite horrible, stormy, unsettled conditions we do have at the moment. So anyway, thanks for watching. Make sure you stay safe out there. It's going to be blustery, going to be windy, going to be stormy, and it's going to be cold. As I said, get through it, and we'll get to something a bit warmer and drier next week. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.